Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to Croud and Similarweb webinar, Keeping Up with E-Commerce in 2021. We have on our panel today Bethany Mercer. She's an e-commerce account director at Croud, Sam Brady, digital planner at Croud, and Thomas Iliokas, agencies industry consultant at Similarweb. I hope you enjoy. We'll give some time at the end of the session to ask questions, and also feel free to write in the chat any question that you might have. So handing it over to Thomas.
Hello guys, I hope you can hear me well. So as Adi said, my name is Thomas, and today we're going to look at the shopping category and its growth and evolution over the last 12 months. So at the first slide, what we're actually seeing here is traffic over the last 24 months and trying to see what happened. So if you can see, there are dark blue and light blue sections, is because it's mobile and desktop traffic. And over the last 12 months, what is very clear is the significant growth. And if you look closer, it actually happened around May 2020, where the big increase happened, and it stayed all over across the year. An overall increase in the shopping category is actually 28% in United Kingdom. So this is a huge increase, and of course, a lot of this is due to COVID lockdowns, and people are going to the shopping online a lot more than before. So we see this huge influx of new customers, new potential users for a lot of companies to get into and increase their market share in general, and also increase traffic overall. I didn't know you had some questions for our panelists as well on this slide.
Yes. So I wanted to ask Bethany, do you expect this to be a permanent shift in consumer behavior, or are we going to see a sustained uplift in online shopping?
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone over the course of lockdowns have been forced to change their behaviour one way or another. I certainly online shopped before COVID anyway, but I know lots of people didn't and have been forced into that, and have kind of been really bought into the next day delivery, not having to leave your house or get dressed or any of those sorts of things. So there's definitely an opportunity to see that continue, and I think people have kind of been really bought into the ease of online shopping. I think there'll still always be a place for high street and for window shopping and kind of those quick Saturday afternoons where you go for a coffee and buy something little or big. But I think for the most part, certainly considered purchases and frequent purchases will continue to stay online.
Yeah, I think there was a very important point Bethany actually brought up offline, and it was really cool what you said, is that it didn't only accelerate adoption from the consumer side. Is of course, a lot more people who maybe one day would have used online shopping before, they started doing it earlier and then understood how convenient and fast it is. And of course, some of them will come back to doing it offline because some things you just like buying offline. But there's also another side that you point out, which is very big, is that shops actually had to be better at serving the customers online. And it can be through multiple things. It can be through actually adding more stock to their online stores, improving the experience, reducing shipping costs, everything. And because they had to do that, this also accelerated this long-term growth. So we could have seen this growth over next 4 years, and it might have been slower to get to this point, but it just here faster. So I also think a lot of this will stay. It might drop off a little bit in the short term because a lot of people who are made to do it online, but they enjoy do some of the shopping offline, will do it offline. But because we have these forces from both sides, consumer and actual companies, I think the majority of this trend will actually stay there.
Yeah, I think I would echo the points that both of you made there, definitely. In the UK as a whole, I think e-commerce penetration jumped really, really high during lockdown, as we sort of would expect from, I think all the way up to 30%, the government said in their most recent figures. And Thomas, you make a really interesting point around experience. What I think brands have done so well and had to do to adapt to survive in the first lockdown is get that functional stuff really right. So like you said, checkout processes, payment methods, all of that has become, a lot easier because it's kind of adapt or survive time. And then it's kind of like, what do we do next? And a lot of brands are starting to sort of experiment with other things around discovery for online shopping and the wider experience after a customer's purchase, and how do you keep that customer engaged?
Yeah, exactly. And that actually brings another point why this also data is important, and is if you are an e-commerce lately and you see your shop like traffic going 20%, you think, oh, this is amazing. 20% is so much. But then if you look compared to the industry or your competitors, it's a very different picture. You're actually underperforming. And this is why during the times of change, we need more data to understand the context of what is going on. If this would be flat, we'd be like, okay, I'm growing and this is great. And it's actually probably more than industry. But now with this fast change in the market, you need a lot more data to actually get context and understand what is going on and what your performance is actually. Is it actually good, or are you underperforming?
Thanks, Thomas. We'll be interested to hear now how does it compare to other European markets?
Yeah, and I think this was also an interesting slide, just because we see it's not an isolated thing to the UK, and we see most, like 3 out of 7 European markets actually reach 40% year-over-year growth in November 2020. So first of all, it is the main shopping seasons for most shopping sites, where you get discounts, more of the consumers actually go and buy stuff. You have all the discounts. And what is interesting this year is that most of the European markets have seen a huge growth. And it's also interesting that there was a big debate just before this. No one actually knew how big the uplift will be. And if it will be that big, just because you have more consumers going online, but do they have actual money to spend, because so many of them were out of jobs? So I think it kind of clears two things out, is that, okay, we've seen this growth in the beginning of the year. We've seen how big it was. So it did sustain in all of the markets. And we see the largest ones being France, I think Italy and Spain, and then United Kingdom is next. And then another point is that it actually sustained through the year, and we see the shopping season be bigger than ever and across all of the countries.
It is a really interesting slide, actually. Something that stands out for me here is that variation between markets, right? And say you're a multi-market retailer invested across these European markets, you're trying to look for, where do I push more than others, particularly online. And I think, this gives a lot of signals around where retailers can start to think about investing in markets that have seen more of an uplift in e-commerce and might be a bit of an easier sale to consumers. And also points, I think, to the underlying consumer behavior behind these curves as well, right? So last year seen very dramatic shifts in consumer behavior in terms of time spent on platforms like social media and online video as well. Overnight, really significant step changes in the amount of time people are spending on these. And, savvy brands are going to stay really close to changes in consumer behavior and changes in market adoptions of things such as online shopping to know where to sort of place their bets when they move forward.
Yeah. I think so, right, Sam. When you say the markets that have changed so much are likely to be the ones that are sort of worth looking at in more detail, but also the ones that have, like, dependent on what base they've come from in the first place. So the UK particularly has always been fairly well market leading in terms of the adoption of online shopping anyway. So that would be another really good indicator of how likely these trends are to stick, how more established the online presence was in the first place, and those sorts of logistics and delivery things that people have had to sort out over the last year, how well adapted those markets have been to those changes.
Yeah, and I think there's also a big difference. You can see Germany increasing only 21% during the same period, where France increased 50%. So you can also understand how much you should increase your budget in certain markets. Like if that market is growing so much, your budget should be growing also with that, taking that in mind as well. So I think that's why this is such a crucial information everyone should be tracking, just because you're flying blind without it. And if you are doing the same amount of investment, even though one of the markets is growing 2.5 times faster than another one, you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities.
Yeah,
So
that's
how do you
it. And
suggest brands keep on top of consumer behavior? I mean, how often should they reevaluate their marketing plans when it comes to expanding to new markets?
that's precisely the point I was going to come on to be honest. The significant changes that you can see on the chart, I think, means that brands need to be more on it than ever, and checking this information, as regularly as they sort of possibly can, right? There's been a lot of disruptive change over the last year, and even as we see, vaccine rollout and lockdown start to ease, I think here in the UK, it's leading to quite significant changes that will have big implications for the way that brands need to advertise. I think if we think of, lockdown easing day one here in the UK, it was like crazy queues outside Primark, which don't even have an e-commerce site, but are such a significant fashion retailer. And immediately for brands, they should be thinking, well, okay, people are back on the high streets. How do we need to adapt? And it's looking at data like this that's going to help inform the strategy.
And also things like different governments and governing bodies, how committed are they to driving high street sales up or footfall back up again, will have a massive impact on this. If there's loads of initiatives to get you to go out in the real world and shop, then these sorts of trends are probably less likely to stick around than in markets where there's less of those incentives about.
Yeah, and I completely agree with people queuing to Primark. That was the first shop I went to because I missed my £5 t-shirts. They're amazing. So yeah, I think we can go to the next one. So here, what we're trying to see is we see the market's growing, and what we want to understand from a marketing perspective is which channels are driving this growth, where do companies actually invest the most of it, and how they actually reaching that growth. So here we're looking at United Kingdom, so UK for shopping category marketing channels. So it's for all companies in that category. We see the growth of different channels for the last 24 months. And what is very clear here is that top line that you see, light blue one, is paid search, and that's grown significantly. I think it started at around 25 million. Now it's at almost 50 million. So basically in just 12 months, it doubled in total traffic from paid search, which is huge increase. So and that's during the time when we've seen Amazon decrease its paid search in, I think, last March, and we see such a big growth. So another interesting point here that you cannot see as clearly, but affiliate or referral traffic has grown also significantly. I think it's almost 2x as well. So, and that we're going to see that in other countries as well. So I think the question here, Adi, was about how sustainable that is, right?
Well, we can see that the paid search is the fastest growing channel in the UK and other European markets. Is there a risk of brands and retailers becoming over-reliant on paid search?
I think over-reliance isn't necessarily a bad thing, so long as it's used strategically and with eyes wide open. By nature, it's much more fast-pacing than some of the sort of organic channels, for example. we can get learnings very quickly. It's kind of quite easy to turn off and turn on again. So it's really good for sort of testing capabilities and to understand where, for things like new markets, for example, or sort of new things that you want to try out. It's really quick to get those learnings from something like paid search to then roll out across the board. So I don't necessarily think that over-reliance on paid search is a bad thing, so long as there is thought behind it and purpose.
Yeah, I'd like to steal a phrase from you, Beth, there. I think eyes wide open is very important. I have a view that there's potentially a bit of a risk in the sense that, generally we see, I think last year the product of this additional spend in paid search, and we've seen similar for Facebook in terms of the duopoly of digital advertising has increased quite significantly. And there's a few factors that really spurred this on, right? The rise in traffic for online shopping and the conversion rates behind that soaring forward. And on a platform like Facebook, increased time spent on that means that there's been a lot more inventory available, and that CPMs have generally fallen on that platform. So it made it very profitable last year for brands to really invest a lot in that. But we've kind of, I think already in terms of CPMs, seen a bit of a turning of the corner at the end of last year, and in 2021, those have started to rise again. And might see the same with conversion rates, at least a little bit of about rebalancing in the short term as people head back to the high street. So definitely advocate eyes wide open and be very careful, I think, about putting all your eggs in one basket at least.
Yeah, and I think the beauty about paid search is that you can, if you track your return on investment, you can do it quite well. So if you actually tracking it and you're getting your return on investment back, and you're doing it strategically, as Beth said, then it's completely fine. I think the problem here is, as I mentioned to you guys before, is a lot of companies just starting doing it now. They just onboarding new people to do their paid search. They're using stuff they've never done before. The tracking is probably not in place to be proper. So if you are that one of those companies who are doing it really fast to go into market, that's where the risks are. Is if you don't have a proper plan or proper tracking in place, that's where you can spend a lot of money on paid search and not get as much as you thought you will out of it. It's not as easy as it seems sometimes in the first place. And I think what we look at now is the same view for marketing channels, but it's for France. So just to look at a very similar view. And what we see here is really that paid search didn't see as much of the growth as in the UK. So we even see a decline of maybe about 30-20% right here. And what we see on the other side is a big growth in affiliate market or referrals in general. And it happened during this similar time. So maybe free, more converting channels like affiliates and referrals are going up while paid search is decreasing, probably because they're actually taking a different approach of maybe saving money, which has two sides to it, because actually France is one of the things I've seen anecdotal evidence of it going bad to companies, because some grocery websites, when they did an analysis last year, the leader grocery site had actually shut off all its paid channels because they were getting so much traffic. So it's similar to shopping websites. But then the third largest one has increased it. And what they did is actually gathered so many new people coming into the industry because they had to use online shopping, that now it's still the largest player in the industry by the market share. So it basically got all that market share during that time that was new and used the paid search to actually get it. And now is the leader in the industry, and actually the one has fallen, not by total users, but it didn't get as much of the new potential users during that time due to this more cautious money saving approach.
Yeah, and I think that's comes back to the point that we were talking about a couple of slides ago about really being sensitive to different markets and what's going on within that, right? Thomas, the example you used there was French retailers in particular, but if we can think about, again, a multi-market retailer who might have access to this data and can see in the UK, paid search is really increasing and can see from data within, say, their Google Ads ad account that they're facing really strong competition. But in France, retailers potentially pulling back and the market opening up a bit, CPCs falling. They can adjust their strategy, right? They can adjust their budgets and they're bidding within that to really take advantage of it. And again, it's that differences in how brands are behaving within markets and how consumers are behaving within markets as well. That's really important there.
Yeah, exactly. And we see a very similar picture in Germany. So we see a drop off in paid search and increase in referrals. And I think the others are staying quite flat. A bit of an increase in display, but it's quite minimal. So yeah, I think it's a very similar picture to the French one. So I don't think we need to dive deep into here. And here we're looking at actual market share for top companies in United Kingdom. And a few interesting things is that Amazon, of course, is the leader with 30% market share, which actually stayed the same during the last 12 months and didn't change much. And then we see eBay with also consistent market share with a little drop off in the last month compared to the last year. So the small players are gaining some ground, but it's not that big of a difference. So what we see here from the growth perspective is the fastest growing out of these ones were Etsy. And Etsy grew its traffic twice the size in the last 12 months. So it's a huge increase in traffic in market share. So this is also not just traffic share in general, it's a market share. So the traffic actually grew even more. And it's very interesting to see how they managed to do it.
Probably just me doing my Christmas shopping on Etsy. Yeah, no, I think marketplaces in general are such a massive opportunity now. I think consumers are maybe a bit blind to where they're shopping. They don't really mind where it is that they get it. It will just be down to things like delivery prices and delivery offerings. Someone like Amazon, for example, if you're in that kind of prime scheme, you're far more likely to buy through that retailer the same product as you could buy on their brand.com site, which has like £3 delivery and kind of 3 to 5 working days, that sort of stuff. So that ease is so important. And I think even across even where those sort of delivery options aren't available on places like Etsy, it's the ability to buy from sort of more than one retailer or more than one shop or discover those new brands. So things like on Amazon, for example, I think it's about 60% of traffic and the searches that they have on there aren't for branded related terms. So it's far more about discoverability and understanding. So finding out new brands and new products, and there's lots less loyalty when it comes to those marketplaces. So yeah, huge opportunity there.
Well, it seems like there's a great opportunity here, but there's also a risk of cannibalizing your own website. So how would you advise e-commerce businesses to best balance between the various channels?
It's such a tricky one to measure. Go on, Sam.
No, I was just going to add, I think, undeniably is part of that consumer journey. Beth, you're probably right in what you're going to say. Is a tricky one to measure. I think for brands, you have to weigh up the sort of the contribution that you're receiving from each of the channels, right? Be it an Amazon or D2C generated by paid search, social, whatever it might be, and see. I think different proportions of sales driven through Amazon are good for different brands, really. Some brands will want a bit more control, some brands will want a bit less, but the volume of consumer shopping on Amazon really after that convenience, I think, makes it such a significant place for all retailers.
And as I was saying, there's so much unbranded traffic there. People aren't as loyal. They're willing to go out of kind of comfort zones and test out new brands. So if you're not there because you think that consumer who's bought from you before is going to come back to your brand.com, you might well be missing out on that sale. So I think although it's really difficult to measure that cannibalization, because of the nature of the intent behind searches on those marketplaces and actually the rate of conversion being so high, we quite often see conversion rate on Amazon sort of 10 to 20% higher than it is on Amazon, on their brand.com site. So it's weighing out that conversion rate versus the sort of fees you pay, for example, through those marketplaces. But I think it's a really it's a really important one to measure. But I think for now, certainly, the risk of not being on those marketplaces is far greater than any risk that you might see from that cannibalization.
Yeah, I agree. Especially the convenience point is that I will definitely buy more on Amazon just because I don't have to put my address in, I don't have to register, I don't have to pay shipping. I know it's going to come next day. I know it's going to be very low priced. It's probably not going to be even that much lower on the brand side if it's going to be lower. So all of these things add up, and that's where so many customers actually go there and convert the huge base. And from my experience, what I've seen working with brands is what they tend to do now, they actually see quite a lot of cannibalization through Amazon. So they try to put the cheaper non-branded product that would compete from non-branded keywords a lot more and keep it on Amazon, but then keep the high value, expensive, something that would attract mostly branded searches on Google anyway, like Yeezys or expensive Adidas or Nike products, they actually keep them on their website where they want to control the brand experience. I think the one really cool statistic that you put out is that 60% off keywords and searches are unbranded. So this is a huge one for people to understand. And that is why Amazon is such a big thing for you to get that new market share that you would not be able to get just from organic search other places. And we see actually Etsy's growth right here. So what we're looking at is the difference between the traffic over the last 12 months compared to 12 months before, and it broken down by different channels. And it's very easy to understand that most of the increase actually happened in paid search and then also in direct. So we can see that it was such a big push for Etsy to compete on paid search a lot more to drive that traffic and then make it come back to direct and organic search, which is a lot more branded search as well. But paid search was definitely the main strategy, how they try to increase it in general. And then one more thing we wanted to look at, and it is very important to generally be aware of, is top keywords for category. So you might know your keyword rankings in general, maybe Google Trends, but what is really cool in Similarweb is actually when you look at an industry, you can also see top keywords for an industry, for organic or paid. So what it gives you a perspective on demand for different products or categories of products. So on the left, we see all keywords, organic and non-organic. And top ones are face masks or hair clippers and office chairs, which were so big, especially during COVID and lockdowns. We see how big they were. And when we just started analyzing it last year, it was super surprising that face masks overtook any other keyword. It was the top keyword. And then there was toilet paper. For 1 month, it was the top keyword as well. So it's something that to be really aware of. And what I really like using this for is to manage your marketing campaigns. If there's something really popular right now, you can actually do a marketing campaign around it. It doesn't mean you just do paid search around it or try to optimize your SEO, but you can also do promotion on your website. You can make those pages more prominent, those categories more prominent, and then invest in those.
So if your business doesn't fall into one of these sectors, how can you get in front of shoppers on Amazon and on your website as well?
Yeah, I think, as we said before, so much of that traffic is non-brand related. So Amazon in general has grown. And I know you said there, Tom, that the traffic was relatively static year on year, but Amazon themselves report a 30 to 40% increase in revenue. So even though people aren't necessarily searching more, they're shopping more and buying more. So there is a huge volume of traffic. These are just kind of a couple of examples, and people are searching for everything now on Amazon. We joked, didn't we, last week, that people don't Google things anymore, they Amazon them. So all of that traffic is there for the taking. And I think things like getting retail ready, we call it, so optimizing your product detail pages and that sort of thing is really useful. But to a bit to your point, in the method that we talked about before with paid search on the rise, paid search on Amazon is a really great way to kind of boost that sales velocity quickly and get you up in your relative rankings much quicker, and get seen by Amazon really in a much quicker way. But also events that they do, so things like Prime Day or those deals are a really good way to sort of get front and center on the Amazon homepage before anyone's even started a search. It's really both really good quick ways of getting your sales velocity up on those marketplaces.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Sorry, Thomas. I was just going to say, like, it's these categories are quite reflective of last year as well, but I think we've seen it across so many categories, particularly on the likes of Amazon, right? You think of luxury brands in particular as those who might be a bit sort of hesitant to go on an Amazon. Amazon even trying to move into that with, do they call it luxury stores or luxury storefront or something like that, trying to expand their coverage in that point. Yeah. And like often, you've mentioned there a lot the non-brand searches, but I think even brands can be quite a powerful thing to a company that's thinking Amazon isn't the right place for me. Sometimes I'll just ring up Beth in our ecom team and say, check this brand out on Amazon. How much search volume are they getting? And then you take that back and you kind of see, well, actually, it is quite significant. So it might not feel like the right place for that brand, but the consumers are there, they're searching for it. So how do we be on the platform in a way that really works for us?
Yeah, that makes sense. And here you actually see in this slide is Amazon top keywords, and we can see how big the converted visits have grown over the last 12 months. Year-over-year change for all top keywords was so high. So it's not surprising that the returns have increased so much. But yeah, I think this is the last slide we have, and we can go to Q&A. Do you have any questions or any additional questions we actually had for the panel?
Yes, we have a few questions here. So one of our attendees is asking, as the UK and other markets begin to emerge from COVID restrictions, what is your top piece of advice for brands and retailers looking to maintain momentum when it comes to their online sales?
I think we touched on it very briefly earlier, but measurement is such a massive part of that. And so we talk about sort of the online tracking, but that online to offline tracking, which started to gain lots of momentum, it was kind of on everyone's lips in 2019, that will be so key as we come out to show not just how the traffic volumes on both sides changes, so your footfall and your online traffic, but also the relationship between those two, and whether your sort of, I guess, total sales increase or decrease, and if they do either way, where is that increase or decrease coming from?
Yeah, I think it's as similar to 2020. When we see a big shift in what happened, the companies that win is the ones who track and who track well. And if you can see where if you drop off in online search, online traffic is dropping off, and you see increase in footfall or sales there, but you at least know what is happening is that people going more offline. But then if it's not, where does this drop off come from? So maybe if you actually see that your market share is decreasing and that's where your traffic is decreasing, that is the problem. But if the whole industry traffic and the market share is still going up, that is a good sign. So it's all about having context and then making decisions on that context.
Thank you. We have another question. What steps can businesses take to join up their on and offline shopping experiences?
Yeah, that's. Sorry, go on, Beth.
No, I was just going to say, I think from kind of our experience at Croud, one of the trickier sides on that is obviously the offline stuff.
Yeah.
Having really sophisticated point of sale software is so helpful. It's not something that a lot of people have really invested a lot of sort of time or money into, and that's really how you're going to get that data to be the most accurate. We obviously do have estimations, or people like Google have tried to give us an indication from sort of like phone pings and that sort of stuff, and it's really useful and it gives you a good indication of the trend. But to really trust that data, I think having kind of dedicated software and point of sale stuff is really useful.
That's it. Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is just around, the sort of overall discovery process as well. I think that tracking is so important for what's happening in store and what's happening at the conversion point. But sometimes you might feel like online sort of the discovery phase is a bit more difficult to access for brands. So what can be done around that, and how can brands really sort of bring themselves to life on be that sort of social platforms such as Instagram? It's quite sort of visual and engaging, as we well know, and even sort of the aftercare process as well. How do brands continue to interact with customers that they have through their first party data, keep those sort of customers really sort of engaged online as much as offline as well.
Thank you. That's all the questions we have for today. So thank you everyone for joining. This webinar will be available on our website. So feel free to share it with anyone who signed up and unfortunately couldn't make it, or anyone on your team. And we'll see you all on our next webinar.